Hello and welcome to those of you who've joined us. Could you pop in the chat box if you can hear me? It's a quick sound check. Can you tell me if you can hear me? Great stuff. All the yeses are coming in. Thank you guys for speaking to me. Kat here. I'm going to just be doing the sound check before Sarah comes in and shares all this fantastic content with you this evening. Wow, there's loads of you. Well done. That's awesome. Fantastic. I think we've got people from 4 corners of the globe here. Folks, if you're outside of the UK, tell us where you're dialing in from this evening. We'd love to know. Fantastic. Wow. Indiana, United States. We've got New Zealand, Vancouver, Finland. Fantastic. Florida. Hello from Dubai. Not so sunny Cheshire. Hey, never mind. Hello from Bath. Brilliant. This is fantastic. Well, guys, we're going to get started in just a minute or so, and got a couple of seconds, probably 30 seconds, to go and grab a brew or whatever your favourite tipple is, and a notepad and a pen, because I know Sarah's got some fantastic things to share with you this evening, and I'm sure you want to jot some notes down. So you've got just 30 seconds to do that. Well, folks, we don't want to keep you any longer. We're going to get started tonight and let the latecomers come and join us in a second. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Sarah Whitehead. You're in fantastic hands tonight, and I do hope that you enjoy everything we have to share with you. Sarah, over to you.
Hello, hello. I hope that you can see me. Look, I'm real and everything. Isn't it an amazing, wonderful bit of technology? Just love this so much. And I'm so excited to be here and so grateful. I absolutely am aware that time is the most precious resource of all. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. And I'm going to pack a lot into this webinar, because I go on actually quite a lot of webinars, and I think that I always reckon if I get one good thing out of a webinar, then I've done well. But I want you to get a ton of good things. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and hope that the tech is as well behaved as your dogs are, or possibly mine. Okay, so this is a little webinar that I'm very excited about doing, because as many of you all know, I spend a lot of time lying in the bath thinking about stuff. I find that this is a very good way of having inspiration. And one of my most favorite expressions, I think, in pretty much in the whole world, certainly that I've heard relatively recently, is an expression from Susan Friedman. I'm going to say that it's hers because I certainly heard her say it. And that is, what's good enough for today isn't necessarily good enough for tomorrow. And I think that whilst I am that person that has been running puppy socialization groups. I've been, very much involved with talking about how critical early socialization is for puppies, and making sure that we absolutely do our best to do something that I described as and called stress immunization for puppies, in order that they can then deal with life, everything that life has to throw at them later on. It's one of those things where I've always felt like we're doing a lot of it right, and then there are some things that perhaps we could do better. And so with the adage that what's good enough for today isn't good enough for tomorrow, I think we really do need to be constantly thinking, how can I improve this? How can I make this even better than things that I'm already doing? And I don't know what's brought you here this evening, but I guess you may have some involvement in one or more of these particular facets of dog behaviour. You might be already running puppy classes or sessions. You might be a vet nurse or part of a vet practice and be running sessions with it as part of your vet practice, or you might be running classes, puppy training classes. You might be thinking about doing it. You might advise owners on socialization in another way. So here I'm thinking very specifically not just about veterinary staff, but also about rescue and rehoming staff and volunteers. Or you might be, and I put in brackets here, but it shouldn't be in brackets, a rather brilliant dog walker. Because quite honestly, if you're here watching this webinar and you're a dog walker, I take my hat off to you. Well done, because you have so much responsibility. You have so much knowledge that you need to impart walking other people's dogs. I don't know how you do it. You're amazing. You might be a trainer, a behaviorist already, or Lord helps, own a puppy yourself. Oh my word, in which case you'll probably be taking more notes than everybody else, I should imagine. So I thought that in this packed webinar, we would try and cover as much as possible. But the first point that I really want to sort of make is that socialization, often called the critical socialization phase, isn't called critical for nothing. It is so important, vitally important, that we get it right during those very early weeks and months. And if you've been on my one of my masterclasses or one of my webinars before, you will know that actually not only am I a huge proponent of making sure that we get it right in those very early weeks, I also think that actually we have a secondary phase during dogs' adolescence and sort of the teenage phase where it's just as important that we get it right. In fact, I'm going to be slightly controversial and say I think it's almost more important that we get it right in the adolescent phase than in that very early puppy phase. But tonight I'm talking about the puppy side of things, and I'm really sort of talking about it to make sure that we have a good, strong foundation for what comes next, which is often the slightly more tricky teenage stage. I'm going to talk about why a common handling exercise that's fairly often, frequently done, particularly in puppy sessions in veterinary practice, might not be the best plan. And this is something that I think you can extrapolate to just individual puppies when they're out and about as well, and how it is when they meet people that they haven't met before, because I think we probably don't deal with that in quite the way that we could do. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about how we need to be so aware that when we're mixing your precious puppy, my precious puppy, with other dogs, the kinds of things that we need to be looking for to make sure that we are doing it in an optimum way, that we're actually making sure we're doing some preventative work rather than running the risk of actually causing behavioral problems in the future, because I think that's something that I personally feel very strongly about. And I also want to talk about puppies who already have older dogs at home. And I think this is a little topic that really no one else is talking about much. And I think we should be paying much more attention to it. So apart from all that, we're going to talk about canine body language, which if you have heard one of my webinars before, you'll know that's my absolute passion, and how it's so essential that we can all read the subtleties of canine body language when we're going about trying to introduce our puppies to the world at large and to other social beings, because that's what's going to make or break whether you know that it's okay or not. So first, a little bit about me. Some of you may know me through my books. I think this is book number 25. Quite scary actually, because it's amazing. I'm only 21. I don't know how that happened. But this is Clever Dog. There was the book that I always wanted to write, and I'm currently writing the sequel to it. So hopefully that is going to be out, I think early next year, if I carry on with the sort of progress that I'm making at the moment. I'm a full member of the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors. I'm a CCAB, a Certified Clinical Animal Behaviourist, which I always think sounds a little bit dodgy. I'm a registered clinical animal behaviourist, a member of the Association of Pet Dog Trainers. I run a CPD online platform called the Inner Circle. So hello, if you're an Inner Circle member, so fantastic to see you here. I also run a scheme called the Clever Dog Company Method Licensed Trainer Scheme, and hi to you guys as well. This is probably one of the things, but I think it's up there, that I'm proudest of actually, because my belief, my passion is that every single dog should have the opportunity to have help and assistance from not just a good dog trainer, but a blooming brilliant dog trainer, a dog trainer that really understands behavior as well as training. And this has really been my baby that I've been growing for the last couple of years. I'm very proud of it. I also run Think Dog certificate courses. These are accredited home distance and practical handling and training courses. I've got a new program out called 21 Days to a Clever Dog. And of course, the Learn to Talk Dog program, which is all about canine body language and facial expression. And in my spare time, as I do have a bit, I have dogs of my own. I've got 3 dogs, all from rescue, a Chihuahua, a Collie Husky Cross, and a 17-year-old Collie Jack Russell Cross. And I'm a passionate and enthusiastic dog trainer. So very proud to call myself a positive reinforcement dog trainer, not just a kind of posh behaviorist. So that's kind of a bit about me, I guess. So let's get going with the important stuff. And I suppose if I was to sort of set out my stall at the beginning of this, what I think is really important is actually kind of some rules of engagement, if you like. And the first of these is just what do we mean by socialization? And I think this has become a bit of a buzzword. So throughout the sort of the 80s, and yes, sadly, I am that old, we talked a lot about the D word, the dominance word. And now I think the vast majority, I hope, of positive reinforcement trainers and behaviorists know that we don't bandy the word around, because it's just really inappropriate when we're talking about domestic dogs. It just doesn't work when we're talking about domestic dogs. You know, I look at the how I live with my pet dogs, and I think what's in my head most of the time is teamwork. It's not about this sort of hierarchical situation. And I think that we have possibly a little bit of an expectation problem with the word socialization as well. So I'll set out my first rule of engagement, and that is actually that socialization is not my dog has to play with every other dog on the planet. This is something that I think people have slightly begun to believe, because I think when they've read things about socialization, seen things about socialization on TV or online or whatever, it's nearly always about play. And I have some major issues with that, which I'm going to talk about as we progress through the webinar. But first and foremost, what do we mean by socialization? What do I mean? Well, I'm very keen that we don't do the jargon stuff. So what I would say is that if I was asked to give a non-jargon definition of socialization, I think it's about learning to socially interact with other living things. So that means that if it's with other living things, then we have a different set of behaviours and ideas and expectations when we talk about getting our puppies used to things out and about. So, for example, if we're going to talk about we have to get our puppies used to the sound and smell and sight of traffic at a distance, for example, that really needs to fall under the auspices of habituation, not really under socialization. And this is a very important distinction, because here's my little Chihuahua. She's the brown one. I'd only had her at this point about 6 weeks, I think, something like that. And she came to me from the RSPCA with a little dog-to-dog problem. She lacks confidence with other dogs, and so she would do very typical little dog barky stuff, and a bit of swearing at other dogs. And I've worked really hard on helping her with that. And here she is at an event where she's meeting another dog, and you can see, I hope, because we're all obsessed with dog body language, facial expression, that you can see that she is not the confident one of these two dogs. The darker colour one, the black one with his tail up and over his back, he's certainly saying he's more confident, or at least he's trying to express that he's more confident than she is. Her tail is down and is covering that most important area which gives off scent to other dogs, the anal area. And I think she's just playing it cool here. I love their ear expressions as well. And what we're doing here, of course, is that we're trying to do socialization. We're saying greet other dogs politely, say hello, have a nice little chat, and then actually what I want in my world is for my dog to then reorient and think that I am the best thing since sliced bread. Now, it's fairly obvious to me that we want our dogs to be well socialized with people, and I put children in that bracket as well. I try not to keep them as a separate bracket, although they are kind of like a separate species, I think, if you're a dog. But people, other dogs, and then, of course, other animals that your dog might live with or come into contact with a lot. So here's a gorgeous picture of a dog who's clearly very well socialized to his pony friend. And that's a love thing, isn't it? I mean, that's a sweet thing. That's a sweet picture. Actually, you can see the dog's softness in his face. You can see how much the horse is enjoying it. This is a thing of beauty. And this is a dog that's clearly got excellent social skills with a different species, which is, really lovely, really important. However, I don't own a horse. In fact, I exercise my dogs. I live, for those who don't know, I live in the Royal Borough of Windsor, terribly posh here, and I am within spitting distance, although I'm sure the Queen wouldn't like that, but I'm within spitting distance of Windsor Castle and its surrounding grounds. And in areas of the Windsor Crown Estate, the Royal Polo ponies are exercised, and they pretty much run them around about 6 at a time with one rider. I do not want my dogs to have any kind of idea that they might socialize with the polo ponies. I want them to be habituated to horses, habituated to the polo ponies, so they don't even bat an eyelid when the ponies go past. So this is about learning to ignore things in your environment if you're habituating, as opposed to having social interactions with those things, which is really what socialization in my book is all about. Second rule of engagement that we just need to bear in mind, and this sounds so obvious, but I think we must remind ourselves that not all puppies are created equal. And this is even within the same litter of puppies. So what you can actually see here are two pictures. The lower one, which is the 4 puppies on the white background, all from the same litter, quite clearly look really very different from each other. And the 2 puppies that are in somebody's hands at the top there, also from the same litter. Now, what we know is, of course, that actually puppies in the same litter can have different dads, which is quite a remarkable thing in itself. But even if it's the same dad, we must never assume that actually all the puppies, even in the same litter, need the same thing from their socialization and habituation program. And I think this is one of the sort of slight dilemmas that we have, is that in the minds of the general public, the great pet owning public, and I don't mean that in any patronising way, I'm a pet owner too, particularly when my dogs are ill and I have to go to the vet, I become that pet owner. But I think it's difficult for the vast majority of people to understand just how much individual variation there is within a breed, within a type, within a litter of puppies. And that means that, you know, one puppy in that litter might need a lot of confidence building around other dogs. It might need, as a puppy, lots of time off lead around appropriately behaved other dogs. Or they might have the rambunctious, boisterous one in the litter that, quite honestly, if we are going to allow it to romp with other puppies, is only going to end up with a problem, end up with a behavioural problem. So this individual variation is so important. And number three, I think, in terms of our sort of rules of engagement, is we need to start with the end in mind. And I always love the idea that I look at this picture of the puppy golden retriever and the adult golden retriever, and in my mind, and I know that you do it too, as professionals and people who have a passion for dogs, we don't see the puppy. We see the dog that is yet to be. We see all the potential that can either be brought out of that dog or that is going to create problems and havoc for that owner later on. So I just want to say, right, kind of at this stage, is that carefully managed early experiences, including puppy groups, puppy classes, puppy sessions within a veterinary practice, can offer many benefits, including, as I mentioned earlier, stress immunisation and social confidence. However, badly done, have an accident, have a problem, didn't really realise what was happening at the time, didn't read the dog's body language properly, I think it doesn't just exacerbate existing problems, I think it can actually cause behavioural problems later on. So that means always what we need to be trying to do is to look into our crystal ball. This is my gorgeous dog Sky, who I'm just so in love with. Just look at her little furry face. Just want to kiss her little naughty spots all over her face. Look at her. And she's looking into her crystal ball. And the question we have to ask is, how do you want this puppy to behave in 2 years' time when it's an adult dog? That's the question that we want to ask ourselves. And then anything in terms of the answer needs to be, is that appropriate behaviour for a 2-year-old dog? And my view is that actually we shouldn't be allowing even baby puppies to practice any behaviours that we don't want them to exhibit later on. Why? Because if we let them practice behaviours, guess what? They get better at it as adults. So this brings me to consider the kinds of things that often go on under the name of puppy socialisation. And I think really, when I started to think about it from start with end goal in mind and work my way backwards, I then started to question quite a lot of the things that are pretty well accepted in quite a lot of areas, quite a lot of arenas. Now, I want to qualify before I go on that I absolutely know the chances are that nearly everybody who is attending this webinar is probably not my target in a funny sort of way, because you are the educated ones. You are the ones who will spend your own time and your own dedication and your own passion to constantly say what's good enough today is not good enough for tomorrow. But let me tell you, despite the fact that there are tons and tons of people out there doing wonderful things and running life skill classes for puppies and fabulous one-to-one sessions with puppies and contextual based puppy training sessions, which all make perfect sense when you fit them into how that puppy is going to develop and grow within that particular family context. There are also, unfortunately, quite a lot of other groups out there that are currently being run, as I say, under the name of puppy socialisation, which are not optimum. And how do I know this? Well, I will tell you, because less than half a mile from where I live, we have a number of different puppy sessions that are being run, some in local parks, some at the local pet shops, one or two in some training class environments. And whilst I'm not going to do the horrible sort of point the finger thing. Actually, what I feel that we need to do is to be asking ourselves all the time and asking these guys, how do you want these dogs to behave in 2 years' time? So 3 things that I think need to be avoided when we are talking about puppy groups in particular. And this is my first one, which is actually, I have a real bugbear about the exercise which is often known as pass the puppy. So this exercise is often done in sort of veterinary practice or in puppy socialization groups, where owners who've brought their puppies along will often sit round in a circle, and actually they will pass their puppy from themselves, then they'll pass it to the next person, then to the next person, then to the next person, and they will, the idea is that the puppy gets used to being handled by lots of different people. But the problem that I have with this when I look at it, and this is from direct observation, is that unfortunately what we have nearly always is novice handlers within the group. So these are, you know, average, normal human beings that have got a puppy, perhaps for the first time, perhaps for the second time, perhaps even for the third time, but they are not experts. They are novice handlers. And when they pass their puppy to the left, like a sort of pass the parcel, who do you think they're thinking about now? Are they thinking about the puppy that they now have on their lap, that they've just been handed from the person on their right? Or are they thinking about their puppy as it's being passed around the room? So they're not really concentrating on what's going on with the puppy that they've actually got on their lap. And I think that the biggest problem with this sort of exercise, and I've seen it done in situations where I have actually, in front of my very own eyes, seen the results of it, is that actually instead of desensitizing puppies to being handled and associating being handled with pleasant things like food and calmness and all those sorts of things that we hope that a puppy would have those associations with, actually what we have is a puppy that ends up being sensitized, not just to the touch or the handling by strangers, but also potentially to the environment. So if that's being done in a veterinary practice, that's particularly risky. I've seen pass the puppy exercise done with the Sound Scary CD going on in the background. So actually there are sounds of babies crying and aeroplanes going overhead and fireworks, with the idea that, of course, that will desensitize the puppy to those sounds whilst this is all happening. And I think what we are really risking here is that actually we are potentially creating a problem where the puppy associates a negative experience of being handled by somebody that it doesn't really enjoy it, with those other aspects of the environment happening at the same time. And all of these things lead to stress. Now, stress is one of those areas where a little bit, it's like a gin and tonic really, isn't it? A little bit probably is okay. A little bit of stress actually means that you can get up in the morning as a human being, put on clothes, go and meet people that you've never met before, or ride the subway, or give a presentation at work, or run a webinar, for example. It's a little bit of stress on a kind of ongoing basis. Really, stress immunizes you to life. It can be quite a good thing. In fact, when people talk to me about stress, very often what they're talking about and what I hear are two very different things. So they might describe a situation that they would describe as stressful, and I might interpret that as that situation as being exciting. So some of it is about your interpretation, but too much stress is undoubtedly not a good thing. Stress that you can't handle causes all kinds of problems. It can cause mental, emotional, and physiological changes, which are then very difficult actually to overcome. And if you've ever worked for a boss who didn't know what they were going to feel like or be like or how they were going to be on a Monday morning, you will know that your stress can start as early as Saturday morning with the fear that you've got to go back to work on the following Monday. You know, that's unpleasant, chronic, long-term, damaging stress. That's not excitement. And I think that, you know, there's a very fine line between the two things. So how do we spot stress in puppies? Well, of course, the answer is in very similar ways to that we do in adult dogs. But what I would say is that actually for a lot of people, they just don't see it in the same way. Because it's a puppy, because it's squirmy and cute and small and it's got those big round eyes, people often just don't pick up the same signs of stress in puppies as they perhaps, we hope, they might in adult dogs. So we all know about the 4Fs, I'm guessing. Everybody pretty much knows about the 4Fs. And the first of these is as we know, is flight. This is the desire to run away as a coping strategy, to remove yourself from the situation that you find yourself in. You want to flee the situation as your first option on your coping strategy. And you can see that this Springer Spaniel in this picture, despite the fact that he really likes his young handler, actually is finding this situation too tricky in the context of the photo session. And you can see that the tongue, which has come right out over the dog's nose, is tasting and smelling the molecules in the environment at the same time. And that's an indication that the dog is looking for more information about the environment. It feels uncomfortable enough that it needs more information. You'll see the body weight is moving away from the child, that it's lowered at the back end. The front paw raises in actually an appeasing, slightly appeasing gesture. The eyes are round and wide with the pupils dilated. This is all signs of a puppy who is experiencing flight. And you can just tell that, of course, straight away. But if you're like me and you receive lots of photos from friends and family who know that you love dogs and particularly know that you love puppies, then you'll probably get sent from time to time pictures like this, where perhaps the flight is a little bit more tricky to notice. Because if you are a normal person, a normal human being who's not obsessed with dogs, not obsessed with dog body language and facial expression, then you might actually not realize that this stationary head movement away from the child in this situation says, I would like to escape, that I need to remove myself from this situation. But for whatever reason, I feel like actually my options are limited and all I can do is move my head away. And I'm guessing you immediately see that. You can see the discomfort in the puppy's face. You can see actually that the facial muscles are tense and that the forehead is brought forwards. So this is a form of flight, and it's kind of a subtle thing if you don't have a pile of dog books by your bed. You know, if you're a person that reads normal books and magazines and things, and you're not dog obsessed, this might be a little bit more tricky to actually see. Then we got fight, and I've very deliberately chosen this photograph because actually what I see very frequently are puppies that will do this little movement up towards people's faces, especially people that they don't know. When that human face comes a little bit too close to them, that very fast movement that even a tiny baby puppy can do, which is up and towards the face, and if you're very unlucky, it will actually get your nose or your chin. And I don't know a single human being on this planet that doesn't move their face away, really fast away from those little teeth, even though those teeth are baby teeth, puppy teeth at that stage. And of course, if we ask ourselves and sort of put this little behavior into the bracket of fight, there's a little bit, I'm sure, of you that is going, really, but it's only a puppy. Isn't it just trying to nip somebody's nose because it's fun? Well, I would actually guess that for the vast majority of time, what's happening is that the puppy says, you know what, human, your face is too close. I'm going to bring my mouth, my teeth up fast towards your face because that's a hardwired drive that I have in my system, and I can use that if I have to. And guess what? The human is going to move their face away. Bang! In that first instance, your puppy has just learned if you want to get rid of a human that's too close to you, all you have to do is use your teeth fast towards their face, and it works. So I've got a little clip here. Now, I know that sometimes when we run clips on webinars that actually we are slightly reliant on your broadband speed. So my broadband speed, I'm very pleased to tell you, is fantastic. But sometimes what happens is actually that if your broadband speed is a little slow, the clip can come across a little jerky. So apologies for that, but it's a very, very short little clip. And this is the puppy face bite in action. So I hope you managed to see that. Excuse me, just having a little cough. Managed to see that, and the guy does that very typical thing, which is actually as soon as he's moved his face away from the puppy's teeth coming fast towards him, he then laughs, because actually there's a sort of combination of slight shock and also a little bit of embarrassment. I think there's a bit of mammalian embarrassment that actually we kind of know we've overstepped a little boundary there, and the puppy has said, you know, human, your face was too close. Then we have a whole gamut of freeze responses, and this is the third F that most people know about, but again, that often goes unheeded. So actually, when puppies do that tiny little bit of stillness, often prior to using one of the other coping strategies, it's very often overlooked. It's often ignored. People often just simply don't see it. But little freeze responses nearly always tell you that actually the dog is feeling uncomfortable. And again, I hope you can see that in the dog's facial expression, body language here. Clearly, we can look at this this puppy and say, you know, very cute, but not entirely comfortable with the situation. And then the fourth F is, if we're going to be polite, is flirt or fiddle about. And this is a Labrador puppy doing a beautiful demonstration. If you've ever tried to shift a golden retriever or a Labrador, particularly a full-grown one, who is doing flirt or fiddle about because he's just using it as a coping strategy, you will know they become an absolute sack of potatoes. They lie on the floor, they use their sort of body weight as a dead weight, and you are not going to move that dog for love nor money. This is a kind of polite way of saying, you're overstepping the mark, human. I don't quite know how else to deal with it. Don't know how else to handle it. I don't want to bite you. I can't run away. And so I'm going to go a little bit giddy, as we would say in this household. And I love this photograph. I actually took this photograph in somebody else's class, and I love this photograph because I adore the frustration on the little girl's face and her body language towards her dad, and her dad is showing the ultimate in kind of learned helplessness. So a very funny little photograph, I think. And no Labrador puppies were hurt in the making of that photograph, but very amusing. So this is the kind of the flirt strategy, which is, you know, really, if I flirt with you, then you won't insist I have my teeth cleaned or my toenails clipped or whatever it is that you want to do to that particular dog that it doesn't want. I don't know what was happening in this picture. I can't remember actually, even though I was there. I think perhaps the chap wanted the dog to sit up from the down position, and it was just a bit much for the puppy. And then more recently, actually, in human psychology, psychologists have started to talk about a fifth F. And I know that, you know, the mysteries of a fifth, it's difficult to say, a fifth F. Sorry about the feedback on that, has been discussed quite a bit. But actually what human psychologists now are talking about is flock. And this is a phenomenon that happens when there are people become fearful and anxious outside. And of course, we have all too much of that at the moment going on in the news, that people will then cluster together in order to get some sort of feeling of social reassurance. And actually, whilst you might think, well, dogs don't do that, do they? Well, I think they do. This is an example. This is a little dog that actually we were working with. It's not my Chihuahua. She's a gorgeous Chihuahua. She's not mine. And we were working with this little dog in one of our practical handling courses at a rescue centre. And she was having a lovely time, actually. She was really enjoying the training. She was enjoying the social interaction with the new people in the room. And she was just having a really nice, confidence building session, being out of her kennel and doing a little bit of clicker training and really enjoying herself. And then somebody, I think it was the guy delivering the buffet lunches for the course participants, came to the door and knocked on the door, and she was worried by it. It triggered a little bit of anxiety, and bless her, even though she'd only met us for probably the preceding 20 minutes, she ran to me and flocked. She said, "You're a human. I need you. I understand that you can help me here." And I think that is a lovely, lovely social thing. And anytime a dog does that, if a dog runs back to you when you're walking it out in the woods or the park, or anywhere out on a walk, if it comes back to you, goes round behind you or jumps up at you, it's really important that we don't think, oh, the dog's being naughty, it's just jumping up at us. It's absolutely the opposite. It's saying, human, I understand that you can help me here. You are part of my team. You need to protect me. You need to give me some security. And it's a huge compliment, and we should really make sure, absolutely, that we respond to that and that we say, yes, I am going to help you. I am going to agree with you in this particular context, and really make sure that we're not ignoring that little cry for help. I think that's such a compliment. Why would we ignore it? We really wouldn't, would we? We really shouldn't, that's for sure. So just heading back therefore to the idea of the handling session within the kind of pass the puppy scenario. Again, got a little clip here, which I hope that you're going to be able to see, even if you can't see it running as smoothly as Silk, which we hope you can, right from the get-go. What I hope that you can see actually is that there are stress on some of these dogs' faces. So actually what you can see, there's a Labrador here, I don't know if you can see that, and he's got his lips pulled back into what's known as an appeasement grin. And if you can see this muscle or tendon here is bulging on the dog's face, and that's nearly always a sign of stress in puppies. The length of, and adult dogs of course, the length of the dog's tongue here, if it was very hot, you might say, well, yes, he's possibly doing some panting for that reason. But actually, the length of the dog's tongue here is what we describe as spatulate. It means that the dog's tongue is out because, again, he or she is experiencing some stress. And whilst I never, as I say, never like to sort of, look at the negative side of things, I think it is important that we look at, this is kind of a classic thing, classic way of dogs being handled within the veterinary practice. So these owners are being asked to look at their other owners' puppy's teeth. And what you can actually see, if your video is being kind enough to you, is that this puppy here is showing lots of stress, lots of panting. He's now trying to do escape behavior and actually get away from these very well-meaning, very lovely owners. I mean, not his owners. These are his owners. But he's trying to get away from these people that are handling him. And then this dog here, which looks like it's coping really well, has actually in a huge freeze response. This dog is so unhappy that he's just decided it's best to sit still and hope that nobody notices him. There's a Vizsla that's on this guy's lap here, which is also showing lots of stress behaviors, very uncomfortable, and really feeling very unhappy. So at this point, and I'm not going to show you too much more of the clip because it is a bit distressing. At this point, the sort of slightly catatonic dog here decides to make a break for it and actually leaps from this lady's lap. And no one's hurt, no one's injured, but clearly the dogs are saying they're not happy about this situation. So with that in mind, with all the sort of little aspects of stress that the dogs are demonstrating there, what I would say is that this is probably fairly obvious because they're pretty big overt signs of stress that the dogs are showing. And I think that we have a duty of care primarily to teach other people what those signs of stress are, so that we can help these dogs, so we can actually say that in a context which was meant to be something that was enjoyable and meant to help them enjoy being handled by people that they don't know, actually what we've got going on is very probably the complete opposite. And so there are kind of a couple of things that I'm very concerned about, that I feel like I've been put on this planet to do, and apart from eat ice cream and drink wine, is to make sure that actually we are communicating not just the obvious aspects of canine body language and facial expression to the average sort of man on the street, but also to make sure that we're talking about the subtleties as well. And I think that contrary perhaps to popular belief, that we can learn these things and we can teach them. And as a result, for some of you who may or may not know, I actually spent pretty much 2 years of my life with video camera in hand, stalking people in the local park, at puppy sessions, and pretty much everywhere in between, creating an online canine body language and facial expression course. And that was really in order that we can assess dogs really quickly, that we can reduce stress for these dogs and for owners as well, that we can marry up what our gut instinct tells us about dog facial expression and body language, and also why we believe that. So often people will say to me, oh yes, he looks worried, doesn't he? Or he looks anxious, or he looks stressed. But if I say, why is that? They can't necessarily tell me exactly why. And I think the rationale is very important, so we can actually communicate this to other people as well. So for example, if an owner says, oh, he's guilty, he looks guilty about something, we can say, actually, you know what? He looks anxious because he is showing this, this, and this. Not, well, my view is that he's upset and anxious, not guilty. We need to be able to tell them why. I think it's also really important so we can keep our own dogs safe. More and more, I'm experiencing situations where actually I'm having to predict the behavior of other dogs as they approach mine when they're off lead in exercise areas. And I'm hearing that a lot from other people as well. And I think it's really important that we set ourselves apart from other trainers who perhaps want to use different types of training, shall I put it like that? And so that we can say, the dogs don't lie. The dogs tell us exactly what they are thinking and feeling in training situations and in social context situations as well. And this is all really designed to give you lots of confidence in being able to assess dog body language, and also a little bit of prediction of behavior. And I'm going to come back to this right at the end, because normally my online program, which is 3 full modules of canine body language and facial expression, is £297. But if you stick with me to the end of the webinar today, you are in for a fantastic offer. So just thought I'd mention that at this point in case anybody's dinner was calling. So back to our handling. And I think that the most important part about handling for the vast majority of dogs is that, quite honestly, there is no reason why they should like it. You and I might enjoy being touched by our loved ones. Even then, the context has to be right, doesn't it? If I'm up on stage presenting to 1,200 people in an overseas lecture hall, as much as I adore my husband, I don't really want him to come up on stage and give me a big kiss. I'd like that at home, really would, but not out of context. And certainly if I'm, on the London Underground, and there's a stranger on the tube, I do not want them to touch me. These is sort of social conventions, aren't they? So I personally see that handling is a huge trust issue, and I therefore think that actually it should be done and practiced with, first and foremost, familiar people, and familiar to the dog, that is, and people who are experienced and confident at handling dogs. if I have a puppy right now, what I would want is to take it to and visit my colleagues, my friends in the industry. You know, I'm hugely lucky that I could pretty much call on any one of you who's on the webinar and say, you know, can you just do a little bit of handling with my puppy? And between us, we would make a cracking job of it. It's not quite as easy for everybody else on the planet. It needs to be associated with positives, and it's very important, I think, that it's based on choice. So there's tons of fantastic stuff going on at the moment out there in the sort of animal training world. And whatever you think about animals being kept in captivity, you know, whatever your beliefs are about that, the fact that there is training now going on with captive animals so that they're not having to be darted and sedated, to have basic management procedures done on a day-to-day basis, you know, we all have to celebrate that part of it. So my view is, you know, if you can get a hyena to offer its hip through the bars to have a vaccination done, then, you know, kind of what's our excuse with dogs? We should be teaching dogs these things. We should be teaching dogs, give me your chin and leave it there for toothbrushing, you know, offer your hip for vaccination, offer your neck for vaccination, offer your front leg for blood testing. We should be doing this stuff with dogs. You know, if they can, frankly, if they can do it with polar bears, we should be able to do it with our dogs. And this is all about how we should actually be utilizing training as part of, you know, those early weeks with our puppies, not just relying on desensitization programs. We must do, I think, much more than that when we're thinking about those early stages with our puppies. The second thing that I really have a huge worry about is uncontrolled off-lead play between puppies. Now, I'm going to say it again. I know that there are people out there doing wonderful, wonderful things with learning, you know, teaching people how to help their puppies learn life skills, socialization skills included within that. But I am still extremely concerned about uncontrolled off-lead play sessions between puppies where the puppies haven't been individually assessed. They haven't been, owners haven't been given enough information about how they should be the best thing in the room versus the other puppies in the room. And I think that it's my main worry with it is that it's done without thinking about the future. So when I consider what I would want to do if I had a puppy right now, and who knows, it might happen sooner rather than later if I get my way, that actually what I would be most concerned about is that I want my puppy to behave now as I want him or her to behave in the future. How do I want my puppy to behave as an adult when he meets other dogs, when she mixes with other dogs later, or when he meets them on walks? Do I always want him to be obsessed with playing with other dogs? Or actually, you know, we're very lucky in this country, in the UK, that the vast majority of the time dogs can meet off lead. You know, very often it's in woodland or it's in the park, you know, nice open spaces. What I really want my dog to do is to say hello politely, have a, you know, exchange a few polite words in conversation, and then actually move on. Just keep walking with me. I don't really want my dog to play and play and play and play and play with other dogs. I want him to enjoy the company of other dogs, but I don't want him to be obsessed with them. And in the vet's waiting room, quite honestly, you know what, hand on heart, I want to take my dog in. I want him or her to sit calmly and quietly without anxiety next to me or in front of me. I don't want him to look at the cat in the basket next door. I don't want him to glance towards the swan that has been brought in by the Swan Lifeline Trust, which we have local here to us. I want him to be calm in that situation. I do not want him to anticipate a mad play session with other dogs. I really don't. So whilst I totally understand and appreciate that actually this is done in the name of kind of, you know, the play sessions are done in the name of learning social skills with other dogs. Unfortunately, what I see quite a lot of is that there's no individual assessment about what those individual puppies need. So in any one group of puppies in a puppy socialization group in a vet practice or in a training class situation or at my local pet store, which is, as I mentioned earlier, where they're now running some sessions like this, what I would suggest is an absolute minimum is that the person who's running that session at least knows which puppies are going to be a little bit worried, a little bit nervous in that environment, which puppies have already met lots and lots of other puppies, and which puppies absolutely should not have uncontrolled play with other dogs. And you don't have to go, unfortunately, very far to see as many clips as you like of puppies that really shouldn't be off the lead together without owners intervening. And, I just kind of think you can go on YouTube and pick pretty much anyone you want. And I would say that, unfortunately, about 9 times out of 10, you're going to see behaviours which really I regard that should not be being practiced at an early stage of puppy development, and certainly shouldn't be being practiced into what I would regard as the beginning of adolescence in our dogs. And unfortunately, when we look at this particular clip, that's exactly what we see. So we see a very bouncy big black Labrador, kind of in pursuit of a Staffy cross. And already in this clip, I've seen probably 25 things that really concern me. So in a very short clip, only a few seconds long, actually, not even half a minute long, pretty much, I see situations that I think, actually, if that was my puppy, I would not want to allow that to be practiced. So this guy, this black Labrador chap here, who is currently, and it's a little bit difficult to see, I appreciate, because this dog, honestly, Frenchies, they always get in the way. This dog's got is also black and is in the way of this dog. But actually, this dog is in a bow posture. And I know traditionally we would call that a play bow. I'm cautious about calling it a play bow because sometimes it ends in play, but often it doesn't. In this context, actually, what this dog is trying to do is get the others to move so that he can chase. And that might be part of his play repertoire. In fact, I'm sure that it is. But for this little white dog here, Havanese, it was very, very scary. And that little white dog has done exactly that flocking coping strategy, came back to his owner and said, "Help me, please." And what did she do? She restrained the little dog on the floor, didn't actually pick him up, didn't help him, didn't get him out of there. And then we've got this guy here who actually looks, to all intents and purposes, like he should be the most rambunctious, boisterous one in the group. But he finds this guy really a bit too much. And he gets bowled over by this one at one point in the clip and finds that very unpleasant. He has his hackles up. I know hackles absolutely don't mean aggression. They mean arousal. So that means he's preparing for flight or fight or one of the other coping strategies. In other words, that arousal system has been triggered. And I personally don't like to see that in this sort of situation if we can help it. Also, when he then meets this little guy, I see his body language and facial expression change. And instead of feeling like the victim, he then unfortunately starts to look a little bit like the one that might enjoy doing a little bit of intimidation and bullying. So, whilst I'm always loath to say, point the finger that this isn't right, personally speaking, if this was my group, I would be having kittens. I think that is an expression that I hope translates across to Greece, where I saw that we had somebody. So if it doesn't, please tell me what the equivalent of having kittens is in some other lands. I'm always fascinated by that kind of stuff. So not my cup of tea, I think. Another brilliant British expression. Rules, therefore, if we are going to have off-lead play amongst puppies. And I think number one is that those puppies need to be assessed individually before anybody is allowed off the lead. They should be mixed according to confidence, not size. So actually you can sometimes be surprised and have a hugely socially confident, wonderfully socially adept Shih Tzu, for example, in your class, who is going to be the most brilliant antidote. and will help your terrified Rottweiler, for example. You know, you can't always tell. Size in this instance is not the priority. Confidence is. I think that puppies should be kept calm and controlled, and that training should be the priority. It's not an add-on. And whilst it's okay to say, as I have heard some people do, well, you can use the off-lead time as an opportunity for owner focus. Yes, you can, but you have to teach that first. I think it's absolutely impossible to teach mere mortal humans how to get their puppy to pay attention to them once the puppies are already off-lead. It's just too difficult for both sides, for both species, for the dogs and for the humans. It's essential that if you have puppies off the lead that you prevent barrier frustration. So, for example, what I mean by that is that they go to the end of the lead, get very frustrated, start barking, and then they're learning all the wrong stuff because actually they're frustrated in that situation that they can't reach the other dogs. And that's a very difficult thing to actually prevent in group sessions, particularly. It's vitally important that we can read the body language and intervene when necessary. And sometimes the intervention is before it even happens. So if in doubt, leave it out is really my message, because actually probably what all puppies really need is to learn how to interact with lots of different types of dog. Calm adult dogs, grumpy adult dogs, indifferent adult dogs, the occasional puppy. Yes, they can have a lovely time if it's a puppy that you've assessed and you've decided is going to be a good match for your puppy. But on the whole, isn't it vitally important that actually puppies learn how to interact across the board, not just learn how to have mad play with other puppies? And I think that this is something that we really need to get a grip of and understand that, yes, of course, puppy sessions, were so much better than, choke chain sessions of the 1960s and 1970s and the punitive type of training that we used to see. So much better than that. But actually, what's good enough for today is not necessarily good enough for tomorrow. So that brings me to really my final avoid rule, if you like, which is that actually I mentioned earlier what I am often also concerned about is puppies that have adult dogs already living at home. And unfortunately, what tends to happen is that if a puppy is going to practice bullying at home with another dog, typically that older dog is very, very tolerant. So people will say to me things like, oh, Max, he's been so wonderful with the puppy. He's amazing. He lets him hang off his ears and he lets him take his food out of his bowl and, he lets him take all his toys and, bless him. He's even got scabs on his ears, poor old thing, where the puppy has just been allowed to beat up the older dog. Sometimes this is also something that happens with cats in the home as well. So actually, bullying is not confined only to the canine species. I have also seen cats that don't necessarily need to be old. They can just be cats that aren't terribly confident with dogs, particularly with puppies, end up being really intimidated in their own homes. And trust me, if you've got a cat that's not happy, I also am passionate about cat behavior, for those that don't already know. For cats that aren't happy in this situation, they let you know in some very uncertain terms that they're not happy. If you're lucky, they tell you by polite means. If you're not so lucky, they spray urine in your shoes and leave a big pile of poo in the middle of your duvet. And that is a cat way of saying, I'm not happy, people. You need to sort this out for me. And also I put in this category that actually sometimes I see puppies that bully people. It's not unheard of at all for actually part of my behaviour practice for any of my licensed Clever Dog Company licensed trainers to go out and see some pretty complex cases that started off with a puppy saying, you know what, human, I want to go for a walk now, or I want to have a biscuit now, or I want to demand attention from you now. And dogs are so clever that, of course, they find brilliant ways of getting attention and getting what they want when they want it, particularly if the owner is inclined to kind of just allow that to happen. And I think this is, of course, where the whole sort of D-word dominance myth came from, because it's really just what gets rewarded gets repeated. It's basic learning theory. It's not dominance. But, of course, if you live with a dog like that and you've created that problem, it can be a real issue to deal with. So it's not confined just to dogs, but that's the most, unfortunately, the most common scenario. So here we have rather lovely older soft-coated Wheaten Terrier guy here. I don't know if you can see him in this little clip. And a new baby puppy that the owners have so proudly brought home. And unfortunately for this old chap, they have shut the two dogs in the kitchen together with a baby gate because they're so pleased with how they're getting on. And there's the puppy launching a little mini attack on his, what should be regarded as his elders and betters. And elders and betters tried very politely to say, actually, you know what, that's a bit inappropriate. Puppy then plays with his own toy for a bit, which is great. That's right, you play with that. That's always a good thing. But unfortunately for our old fella, actually, the puppy playing with his toy is not nearly as exciting as just doing a little bit of intimidation of your older friend. So despite the fact that he started playing with the toy on his own, he then brings it back, positions it very close to the adult dog, and then it's really all about how can I get the older dog to react. So now if you saw the puppy go underneath the older dog there with his tail up in the air, that's a form of scent marking. The puppy just scent marked the older dog, which is not really a terribly polite thing to do in anybody's book. And now elder dog says, I'll try and lie down. Again, a little bit of scent marking with the puppy, rubbing back end on the older dog, actually rubbed its undercarriage on the older dog at one point as well. Older dog tries to sort of say, I really don't like you doing that. But look, oh no, puppy says, here's my rear end. Here are all my scent glands. Here's all my scent communication. That's what you have to put up with. And I just think that the adult dog's face here, I know they have sort of sad faces anyway, but the adult dog's face here just says it all. He says, you know what? You have ruined my life. This thing is going to be a brat, a very cute, very fluffy, very annoying brat. And actually what I did a while ago is look at the statistics from my own behaviour practice. And we looked at the incidence of dog-to-dog aggression in dogs that lived on their own with no other dog companions in the house, and dogs that were second or third dogs in the home. In other words, they had older doggy friends at home. And guess what? Instead of those younger dogs, the puppies that have been brought in, being better with other dogs outside the home, they were worse. They were much worse. In fact, so much worse that it had a predictive value. So when we looked at our practice statistics across a 6-year period, looking at dog-to-dog aggression amongst dogs that lived with other older dogs at home, we, from my own practice statistics, and it was a lot of numbers, actually found that there was an 83% increased chance of that younger dog having a dog-to-dog aggression problem later on. And this is a shock to the vast majority of people out there, because they just think that actually they're going to bring the puppy home, it's going to get on really well with the older dog's going to teach it all the ropes, they're going to be best buddies, and that somehow the socialization will rub off on their newcomer in a good way, in a positive way. And actually what I truly believe, and it'd be lovely to see some wider statistics done on this. This is a research project for some fantastic MSc student out there, is that actually what I would put a huge prediction on is that second dogs and third dogs in a household, unless you do huge amounts of separate independent socialization, habituation and training with that dog, have a much higher propensity to dog aggression, particularly if the other dog or dogs in the home are very tolerant. So the whys and wherefores of that are probably for another webinar, but the message here is the rules for puppies living with older dogs. Don't allow the puppy to beat up grandpa. And this is how I now describe it to pet owners. If they get a second puppy, a second dog in the household, and they get a puppy, I describe it as like beating up their grandparents. You would not allow little Tommy to go and beat up his granddad at the old people's home. So don't allow that to happen with the two dogs in your household. They need to do separate. Yes, people, separate. I know it takes more time. I know it's a pain in the rear, but separate walks, separate training, separate life skills training, and separate habituation. It has to be done separately. These puppies coming into a household where there are other dogs already present need twice as much socialization with other dogs, not half as much. Twice as much. You've got to build behavioral independence and also be aware of preventing unwanted behavioral habits from forming. So, for example, puppies stealing the older dog's food or toys and then guarding it from that older dog. These are all things that have red flags written all over them that actually, if we don't get on top of right at the outset and make sure that we prevent those things from happening, present, I think, very real risks to that dog as it heads into adolescence. So I guess all of this in terms of what's okay and what isn't, because what I don't want to come across as is the play police. I think it is lovely to see dogs playing and enjoying themselves and having a good time together. It comes down to that sort of age-old thing of, it depends on what you're actually looking at as to whether it's okay or not. And I suppose the big question is, how will you know what's okay and what isn't? When you're looking at dogs playing, when you're looking at dogs meeting, when you're looking at puppies out and about, enjoying the habituation side of things and the socialization side of things when they're outside of their own homes. And I think that the dilemma with puppies particularly, and this is why I really think that we need to rethink about their socialization, is that it's much more subtle than most people realize. I think that by the time most people realize that the dog is stressed, it's probably too late, that the behavioral damage has already been done, and that actually then we're into a repair program when we're no longer doing socialization habituation. And I think that assessing canine body language is absolutely a skill that can be learned, and that we have a duty of care to teach others as well. So I don't know what brought you here to this webinar. As I mentioned earlier, I can have a pretty good guess about it, but what I can tell you is that, as I mentioned, I spent good 2 years of my life with a video camera, managed not to be arrested, thankfully, but the video camera filming other people's dogs, meeting, greeting people, other dogs, out in the park, out in the vet practice, you name it. I pretty much went everywhere, and then collating those clips, those photographs, and then doing my interpretation of what was going on, and then the supporting evidence for that interpretation, in order that actually it's a shortcut, so that you really don't have to do the difficult part of it. So that in the end, if you want to have the shortcut to learning all these little bits of subtleties, and making sure that we can really look at a puppy and say, what's it actually saying? Is it comfortable or not comfortable? What do we need to do to help the dog out with that particular thing? Then I've put it all together for you. And this is something that I have called the Learn to Talk Dog program. And there are 3 modules to the program. And the first of those, I'm not going to labour the point, but the first of those is about canine vocabulary. It's about all the basics about how we can learn canine as a foreign language. Then the second one is the 4 Fs, all those coping strategies that I mentioned earlier, but particularly in there, I think my sort of obsession really is the signals that will tell you that aggression might occur. Because if we can switch those off early, then guess what? We can actually prevent aggression from ever happening in the first place. Social signals in the 3rd module, really important. So actually, in sort of like, if you like, the flip side to the red flag behaviors, I think it's essential that we can see when things are okay, when it's appropriate, and not just appropriate, beneficial to allow dogs to play together, for example, to enjoy each other's company. And I've also got the bonus module, which normally is, I actually designed as a separate thing, but actually I've put together in this package for this particular webinar, which is all those early warning systems, which is fear, stress, anxiety, and appeasement. And also, I've got in there some quite surprising little elements, which is things like why actually I think sometimes what looks like appeasement in dogs isn't. There's a little bit of trickery that may be going on. So module 1, we've got tons of lovely photographs for you to look at. We break you in gently. We talk about why play bows aren't always about play. Lots of different meanings of yawns, on which I've done a huge amount of research, and I've been really looking at that in depth. Why certain advice that's still given out about staring at dogs and eye contact is pretty much nonsense, and about what tail wagging actually means from a canine perspective, because I think much of the time what we human beings look at in terms of our visual experience actually started out being about scent communication between dogs rather than the visual side of things. So really important that we sort of think about the bits that don't immediately spring to our mind, which is, of course, odour and scent communication. The second module is all about the flight, fight, freeze, and as you all no doubt know what the other two Fs are. And then social signals in module 3, which is about green flag indicators, how to tell if a dog actually does want to have further contact with you. Love nibbles, which I put in there because I couldn't resist it. And then also the bonus module, which is the early warning system stuff, which I know is the stuff that most people really, really love. This is the stuff that they, you know, if you're hooked on watching dogs, this is the stuff that floats your boat. I know because it floats mine. And these are all the bits and pieces where, you know, we need to talk about. I know there was some discussion about mounting. Absolutely, mounting is not just about sex, but trust me, it's not about dominance either. And being able to explain and marry up your gut instincts about a dog and about maybe what it's saying well before it ever becomes a sticky situation. So I know that if you're like me, you'll be saying, what are the next steps? And of course, how much will it cost me, Sarah? And what I want to say is that normally the whole program, as I mentioned earlier, is £297. And we've made this as a special as a thank you for listening to my webinar today, that all 3 modules and the bonus module are £97, I'm afraid, plus the dreaded VAT, because the government insist on that bit. But it's £97 plus VAT. And this offer is only going to be available until midday on Thursday. So my recommendation is, if you're keen to do the program, but you're like thinking, oh, well, that's great, I'm just about to go on holiday, I'm really busy at the moment, I don't have time to look at all of it, I'm concerned that I won't have time. Don't worry, I would sign up, because actually this offer is only till midday on Thursday, but you get lifetime access. I do joke, of course, that it's my lifetime, not necessarily yours, so you've got a vested interest in keeping me alive, or my husband has anyway. If you, like me, you want to know what happens, if you do clicky on the button and you say, yes, please, I'd like to take you up on the offer, then this is the page that you'll go to, and you just click on the lovely green button there. And that will then take you through to the payment page, which is pretty straightforward. It's the kind of thing we're all used to seeing. If you're like me and you buy everything from Amazon, including your toothpaste, you'll be very familiar with online booking forms and booking pages. And as I say, that takes you through, then you go through to the website once you've registered, and you just click on member login, and then all your modules are there, and your opportunity to take the little quizzes at the end of each module, test yourself. Only you see the answer, so you're fine with that, and you can go through and see if you can improve your score each time. And you've got lifetime access, so you can look at the modules for as long as you want, and you can do the quizzes as many times as you want to. So if anybody would like to take me up on that, as I say, the VIP offer, it's currently at learntotalkdog.com/VIP, and it's available there until midday on Thursday, the 29th of June. As a thank you very much indeed for sticking with me and for being part of the webinar this evening. I really do appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, I absolutely know that time is always of everybody's essence, and I totally appreciate that you have given up your time to listen to this amazing subject. If you've got questions, I'm very happy to do my best to answer them. Probably not this evening, because I know that everybody wants to go off and have a glass of wine, quite honestly, or a nice cup of tea. But certainly you are very welcome to email us. Very happy to look at those, and might not do them all tonight. Might do them tomorrow when I've recovered, but very happy to answer questions. And also, if you've got suggestions or ideas about webinars that you would like me to do in the future, I love to hear from you about what floats your boat, about what kinds of things you would like me to talk about in the future. That always makes me happy as well. But for this webinar, I'd say thank you ever so much for being a part of it, and I hope I've given you some food for thought. Please go off and give your dogs some very gentle hugs and kisses from me. Thank you.